Hello, welcome to my tutorial on how to make rain with Effekseer. This is the result we're going to get by the end. We only need 4 nodes to achieve this. We'll go through each of them and explain what does what. Throughout the video, if I open the tab you don't have in your UI, just go to Windows and you should find it. You can also pin to any side of the interface, so that's up to you. So the 4 nodes that we need are the line that gives the illusion of droplets, the splashes of water, the circles on the floor, and a multiplier to define how many drops and how spread out they are. For this, we'll go over several things: how to draw a line, how to draw circles, and how to cut a texture into frames. Let's first focus on the line. When you spawn several items in a node, by default, they all spawn on the same point. In this case, for instance, all the squares I'm spawning stack on top of each other, so we can't really distinguish them. We'll need to change that for rain. So we'll go into spawning method and change the method to line. This lets us set 2 points from A to B, and the items will appear between those two along that line. These are XYZ coordinates. In the case of rain, it's easy. This field is how high the droplets will fall from. We'll keep it at 10 for this example. So now you see our nodes appear a bit everywhere along that line. We'll need to change it to order so that they appear properly one after the other. Before we continue, we'll change the time to live to about 10 so they don't appear for too long. This is rain after all. So this is what we have at the moment. Before we go further, I want to talk about spawn count and vertices. For this effect, you'll need the spawn count and vertices to be the same number. In this spawning method, we spawn the items across a line, and vertices define how many spawn points there are across that line. Let me illustrate. Right now, we're drawing a line from 10 to 0. By default, that line has 8 vertices. That means that the items we're spawning will appear across these 8 points. If we increase the number of vertices, we increase the number of points the items can drop on. 8 is fine for rain. Once we've decided on this, we can simply change the spawn mode to decide whether or not we want to spread randomly or in order. In the case of rain, it's obviously going to be in order. Last thing, if the spawn count exceeds the vertices when it's set to order, any items left to spawn when we reach the floor will go back to the top. For this reason, in the case of rain, we need to have the same number in each field. Let's sum up a bit. Spawn count 8, time to live 10, spawning method line, initial position Y, final position 0 the floor, spawn mode order. Now let's make it a line. We'll go into render settings. By default, it's set as sprite. We're going to turn it into a track. This means that instead of each vertex spawning their own distant picture, we're stretching the same one across the line. This is exactly what we want. As you can see, we're slowly making our way there. This is still a big block, so that's not good. Now we could use a rain texture or line texture, but because it goes so fast and we don't need a lot of details, we can actually work with this empty texture. We're going to change some of the track properties. Scroll down a bit, you'll find front, middle, and back size. This is how wide the track is going to be. For rain, and because the ends of our line are very sharp, we'll go 0, 0, and the middle one can be something like 0.1 or 0.05, that's up to you. If you want to change the colors, it's up there. Tracks let you be pretty precise about color, but for rain drop you can just set the same one everywhere. The A field is for alpha. Lower the number to make it transparent. On second thought, the line is staying on screen a tad bit too long. Let's make it disappear quicker. We'll change the time to live to 5. And we're actually done with the droplet. Time to focus on our water splatters now. This one is fairly easy, but we're going to get pretty intricate. First, create a new node. Then go into render settings and choose ring. This is what we get. We'll go into rotation and flip it on its x-axis by 90%, so it's flat on the floor. Finally, we'll head back to basic settings and set a delay. We don't want the circle to appear before the drop hits the floor, obviously. The delay depends how long the drop takes to fall. I think 10 would be good. Okay, so we can comfortably work on it now. Back to render settings. In here, we'll play with values outer and inner. What we want is start with the ring that is fairly thick and ends really thin, so thin it disappears. Outer changes how far out of the ring goes and inner how far in, very simply. Right now, these values are fixed. We're going to make them change over time. Change it to easing. I now have a start value and an end value for each. Right now they're both at 0, so the ring doesn't move. We're going to set the end to 2. As you can see, the ring starts at 0 in the middle and slowly makes its way to 2. We'll do the same thing to the outer ring. And now our ring disappeared, simply because the inside rim and the outside rim are on the same point and moving at the same time. To fix this, we're going to use ease in and ease out. Normally, if we move something from a point to another, the animation is perfectly linear. But if we add a slow easing, you can see the animation starts slower and then ramps up toward the end. In the case of a faster ease-in, it's the opposite. It's accelerated right from the get-go and then slows down by the end. In Effekseer, you can of course combine the two by having, for instance, a slow start and a slow end. If we were to represent these in a graph, this is how it would look. Effekseer often mentions quadratic, cubic, quintic formulas, which is basically how steep that curve is going to be and how much the animation will accelerate or decelerate depending on our need. For our wave, we'll simply put the outer ring to faster and the inner ring to slower. As you can see now, the outer ring spreads out quickly, too fast for the inner one to keep up, so we can actually see our plane, and then they reunite by the end on the same position, so it disappears and looks more natural. You can change the color down there if you want, with again A for alpha if you want to make it transparent. Let's add some randomness to it. We'll go in scale and then PV single. Mean is how big the image is, and we'll go in deviation and set it to, I don't know, 0.25 or 0.5 to give some variation to the wave sizes. Some will be bigger, others smaller. And that's it for our wave. You can go back to basic settings and change the timing a bit, reduce time to live to make it quicker, or delay if it's not right. This is pretty good already, I mean for a singular raindrop, but we'll sell it even better with splashes. This one will be a bit hard, but it's going to be useful for a lot of water related animations, as well as say floating petals or that kind of thing. We're going to scroll frames across a texture. Add a new node. Go into basic settings to change the timing so it spawns at the right time like the ring, and then to basic render settings. I'm going to use one of the default Effekseer textures, this one. Now as you can see, by default the 4 splashes appear and it's awkward. We're going to go into UV and animation, and this opens a lot of things. We'll go into details. First we need to tell Effekseer how big our frame is. This is the size setting. To know that, we simply look at the size of our texture, in this case 512 pixels, and divide it accordingly. So for this one it's half the width and half the height, so 256 pixels per frame. This is the value we'll put in size. Next, we count how many frames on x-axis and y-axis respectively. So how many frames there's on one line, how many frames in one column. This is easy, for example 2 and 2, but that will depend on the texture. Next step, where the animation will start. I'll finally explain the mean and dev fields. For instance, position fields, if we draw a line from 10 to 0 and we add some deviation to the start value, it'll randomly spawn between 10 plus 3 and 10 minus 3, so 13 and 7. Back to our animation. For this one we'll keep it super random, so we'll set mean to 0 and dev to 3. This specific field only takes integers and can't go negative, so it'll take any frame between number 0 and 3. Finally, frame length. That's how long each frame is going to appear on screen before going to the next one. For us, we'll take infinite. Our animation is ready. We'll add a fade out just above. I think 10 frames is pretty good. And we're almost done. Let's make it smaller. Go into scale and select easing single. The difference between easing and easing single is the first one lets you scale the picture differently for X, Y, and Z axis, whereas single keeps the aspect ratio. So we'll pick something like 0.25 to 1.5, and you know what dev means, so we'll add randomness to it by about 0.25 as well. I think this is pretty good. At this point you can tweak some timing and scale to see if everything fits together. Also, if you look at it from the floor's point of view, the splash is under the ground. You might want to head position and raise Y a little bit. At last, a multiplier, because a single drop of rain doesn't do it. We'll create a fourth node, go into render settings and pick none. Then we'll go into our node tree and drag and drop our 3 raindrop elements on our multiplier like this. This makes it so that some parameters that we apply to our multiplier will be passed down to all its children. Let's increase the spawn count to make it easier to visualize for now. We'll also untick destroy after time. We'll head to spawning method, and then it depends what you want to do really. If you want rain to drop in a rectangle or in a circle. For a rectangle, you'll take a line, select X start and end, and for Z axis you'll play with deviation values, something like 10 and 10. Finally you can add some deviation to X as well. For a circle, you'll simply select the Y axis, choose how wide the circle is going to be, and then using deviation spread the ring to the desired area. All that's left to do is change the spawn count and the frequency, that's spawn rate. Beware, if you tick the infinite spawn count, which you might want to do for a passive weather effect, do not write 0 in the spawn rate. Effekseer updates values in real time, so for a split second you might ask it to generate an infinite number of raindrops in a single frame, so make sure to untick the infinite box if you must change the spawn rate. And that's it. If I'm perfectly honest, I would still go into more details to make it more natural, but the goal was to cover Effekseer's somewhat intermediate functionalities. I'll leave the texturing and the coloring to you, because that depends a lot on your art direction. Feel free to leave any questions, I'll do my best to reply to them. Thank you to Feather for tagging me in the back in Discord, otherwise I never would have found the motivation to make this guide, something I've actually wanted to do for a while. Thank you for watching, see you!